Carl-Gustaf Lundin is here with us to talk through the upcoming Paris Climate Change Conference. So, Carl, the UN's talks are coming up this December, but what does it mean for the oceans?
Well, you know, the oceans play a huge role in regulating our climate. Already we've seen some rather massive shifts taking place on the planet. So these break down to a few different areas. One is the warming of the ocean. And some regional oceans like the Baltic, we've seen almost 2-degree increase already of the temperature. So we're calculating that more than 90% of actually the excess heat that has been produced by humans has ended up in the ocean. So it's already had a significant climate impact in the sense of solving our problem. I want to say as much as 6 degrees warmer is the calculation people are making right now that we would have been if we didn't have the ocean. So, you know, life is really dependent on the ocean. The second thing, of course, is carbon dioxide is directly absorbed by the sea. So this is a bit like a fizzy drink, if you want. So over time, the oceans become more and more acidic. Now, that's not good for most wildlife. It's not really good for the planet. So we have a real problem here. So even if we were able to deal with other aspects of climate change, this one will continue to be a problem as we put more and more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. A third area is then how can we use the oceans, healthy oceans, in such a way that they're a solution to the problem. And what we're seeing here is if we manage an ecosystem well, let's say we have healthy fish stocks, taking the carbon through a gut of the fish makes it much easier for it to actually build sediment at the bottom of the ocean, which captures the carbon and gets it out of the system. So healthy oceans actually leads to a healthy planet.
Okay, let's focus on that second area for the moment, ocean acidification. You said we have a real problem there at the moment, but what are your expectations from these negotiations?
So right now, I think people are waking up that this is a real issue. We're starting to see certain industries badly affected by this. A good example would be the aquaculture industry, particularly of mussels and clams and oysters. In some parts of the world, like in the Pacific Northwest of the US or in Chile, on some days now, you can't actually pump the water that you used to and put your young larvae in because they will not actually make it because the water has become too acidic. This is something that's happened in the last decade. We didn't have this problem before. So we are starting to see direct industrial impacts and consequences. Now, the Paris talks, I think, are, of course, all about trying to regulate the use of carbon and to diminish our emissions. But part of this story also is to see what we can do to manage the natural systems in a better way. So finding a nature-based solution to this problem, I think, is at the heart of what we're trying to do here. Right. Certain types of systems, like coral reefs, are particularly sensitive to shifts in ocean temperature. So we are now experiencing what seems to be a new big El Niño event, southern oscillation, which in likelihood will have a significant impact on coral reefs and some of the other sensitive systems. We've already seen mass bleaching events, which basically is when the corals get really stressed. They kick out their zooxanthellae and they start to starve. If they continue with this for 3-4 weeks or so, many of these corals will die. In 1998, we had a big event which wiped out more than half of the corals in the Indian Ocean, lots in the Pacific. We've had several subsequent events that have also had very significant impacts. I think it's fair to say that as much as 90% of the world's reefs have been affected by this already. So we have a very significant impact from climate on the reefs of this planet. A lot of us like to go diving, you know, many of the holiday things coming up now of this tourism season. Actually, this might be one of your last chance to see a healthy reef in some parts of the world. So it is an important issue, and getting it right in terms of the negotiations really does matter to us.
Okay, and similarly to the talks focusing on ocean acidification, what about this notion of blue carbon? What are you expecting there?
Well, I think the exciting thing about blue carbon is it's really a positive aspect. What can we do to manage our ecosystems in a better way? So here there is a lot we can actually do. A healthy ecosystem tends to be much more resilient. Also, it can be a more productive system. So healthy fish stocks, for example, are a much better alternative to sick ones. Our coastal carbon stores like seagrass beds, mudflats, mangrove forests, for example, are very efficient in terms of capturing carbon. So what we call blue carbon essentially is capturing and storing carbon in such a way that it doesn't get into the atmosphere and doesn't cause some of these other problems. And I think managing for that is something we're just starting to do. So it's starting to seep into the climate negotiations, but we still have some ways to go before it really will make a big difference. My prediction is that we will have some sort of agreement coming out of this, perhaps not as elaborate as we were hoping. Also, we don't know if quite as many of the world leaders will show up as we perhaps had anticipated before the recent terror acts.
Okay, so your prediction is you have some sort of agreement, but immediately after the Paris talks have been finalised, what can we expect from there?
Well, I think there's a lot of sort of grindy work we need to do also in terms of on day-to-day finding solutions locally, working with people in communities that are managing their inshore coastal areas, for example, discussing with various governments around the world to put in mechanisms that permit them to also get credit for the type of work they're doing. Even looking at the high seas, how can we manage large open ocean areas that currently have no one being their custodian? So I think we're looking at all kinds of solutions. And coming out of Paris, I think we all have an opportunity now to also feed this into the blue growth, to the new blue economy, and making sure that we solve human needs rather than degrade the planet.
Carl, thank you once again.
Pleasure being here.
And thank you for watching. Be sure to check back to Dukascopy TV for more updates and exclusive interviews. We'll see you next time.